QuickBooks Pro Plus Desktop 2022 Memorized Report Group Setup. Get ready because we bookkeeping pros are moving up the hilltop with QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2022. Here we are in our free QuickBooks sample file, sample raw castle construction, going through the setup process with the view drop down, the open windows list on the left hand side, company drop down, home page in the middle, maximizing that home page to the gray area. We're going to be opening up our report just to get an example of the memorization process. Then we want to focus our time on where we're going to be memorizing those reports. Let's start off with the reports drop down, go into the company and financial, go on down to that balance sheet standard report. Now I'm going to make a noticeable change to this report just to see that noticeable change, and imagine we want to save it by going to the customized report up top. Let's go to the headers and footers and do some of our normal stuff, removing the date, the time, the report bases. Let's go into the fonts and numbers. Let's make the column label super big. Let's make the company name super big. We're going to say change the font just for that item. Let's say make that like 20. And then we'll make it different color too, make it red. And there we go. We're going to say okay. I'm just going to say no this time, so it's just the title. And then okay. So there it has been changed. If we want to save that change then, so I don't have to redo it every time, we could put that into our memorized reports we've seen in the past by clicking this button. And then we could put it into memorized, changing this, calling it balance sheet custom or something slightly different. What we want to focus on here, however, is this item, which is to say, where do I want to save those memorized reports so that I can organize those memorized reports and sort them as I choose. So I'm not going to memorize it at this point. I'm going to close this and we're going to go and look at those memorized reports. If you hit the drop down up top, you do have this memorized reports and these items on the left that give you these other little side drop downs. We'd like to be able to customize those items. So to do so, let's go into the reports drop down. Let's go to the report center. The report center we have seen in the past. I'm going to close the icon on the left hand side. Usually it opens up to the standard tab, but we want to be on the memorized tab. We're looking at the memorized reports. Now these reports that are in here, they already have these categories on the left hand side and then reports that are in the middle here. So these, and I believe their idea possibly for doing it this way would be that you could go in here to say like the standard kind of balance sheet and then make your adjustments in this memorized area, and it's already in the memorized reports and it's grouped by kind of normal kind of accounting groupings here. So you can go down here, the normal balance sheet, profit and loss. So you can basically go into this balance sheet and format it the way you would like, and it's already saved in the memorized reports. And that's nice, but you might have a whole nother setup. You might be working, for example, in the accounts receivable department, and you want your memorized reports to be around the accounts receivable agent, the accounts receivable detail, the accounts receivable summary, and so on and so forth. And possibly these categories are not what you actually want. Therefore, you would like to possibly customize this whole thing and then, make your own reports in here. To do that, we could go to the edit item. So we can go to the edit item. And then you could adjust what is already here, or if you want to just remove it, I'm going to practice just basically removing it here, and then create basically your own categories by going down below to the memorized reports, and then you can edit the categories or make a new group and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to delete them. I'm going to say, let's see if we can right click and just basically clean this thing out and delete what is currently in there. So I'm going to say delete report. And I'm just going to clean this thing out. I'm going to right click and delete the memorized report and say, okay, right click and delete the memorized report. I've deleted the rest of the reports. Once they're gone, then you can right click on the account and delete the memorized report here. So I'm going to say, okay. Now I'm actually going to do this the whole way down, so we just have a blank memorized report set up, and then I'm going to add the new reports. I'm going to continue on to the reports inside, right click on them and delete them. So you could also hit the drop up and say delete memorized reports this way. My right click's getting sticky here, so I'm going to say delete the memorized report, and then you can go to the category and delete the category like so, and I'm going to do that all the way down. So now we have nothing in the memorized reports So now you can think about how you'd want to set up your own memorized reports. One way you might think about it is say, I want the memorized reports possibly simply putting my name in the group. If you have multiple different users using the same QuickBooks file, then you might do it this way. You might set up a group and say, I'm going to put my name here and say, okay. And then we can save it to the new reports that we create under the name. So in other words, if I was to maximize the window on the left-hand side, then go to the balance sheet report here, say we want to memorize it, and then say I can say it's a balance sheet. I'm going to go to this item here and go under the name. And so now it's going to that category, and I could say balance sheet. You know, we might want our name here just to categorize it. We could also share with others if we have like multiple users. We're just going to save it to our category for our example. I'm going to say okay. And then if you're listening to it, it'll give you like a camera thing, typically a sound. And then that'll go into your memorized list over here. So if I go into the memorized list, now we've got the balance sheet set up under the name. Another way that we might format this, we might think about it in terms of what if I was doing bookkeeping for someone else like clients, or we were doing the bookkeeping as our bookkeeping job and we're going to be presenting reports periodically to supervisors and so on and so forth. We might then set up our categories of reports. We might say that I would like to have some reports that are going to be my internal reports, and then I might have some reports that are going to be my period end type of reports that are reporting reports that I would like to format differently. So for example, I might do something like this. We might go and say, okay, I'm going to say I want to have a new group, and maybe I'll make a group and say I want the client. I'm going to say, if I'm a bookkeeper, I'm going to say client month end reports. So we'll have the month end reports and say save. And this could be kind of a standardized type of setup that we might then have set up that we're going to do for our particular clients and say, this is what we do. We've got the particular types of clients, and we generally have a standard setup on how we generate the reports, customizing those reports so that our product that we provide, the financial statements periodically, and the information is kind of standardized to our liking, to our basically branding and so on, the way we like to generate them. We might then say, I want the client year-end reports. We might say that we want, say, a new group. And I'm going to say these are going to be the client year-end reports and say okay. And then we might say have internal reports that we format somewhat differently. In other words, I might say that I want my month-end reports that I'm going to batch together. And the process might look something like this. We'd say I'm going to enter the data into the system. As I enter the data into the system, I'm going to be going and using the reports which I like to look at in the format I like to see them to verify my data entry, which might include like a trial balance in addition to like a standard balance sheet and income statement, as well as possibly transaction reports. Then I want reports at the end of the month, and I'm going to batch those reports in some kind of standard way so that I can present them to the client, making them look nice, not for my purposes to verify my data entry, but for their purposes so that I can make it look the way I want to present it. And so you might have particular reports that you do at the end of each month that you would save, like a balance sheet, an income statement, formatted in the way that you think is most pleasing to be presented. And then you also might have different year-end reports, because the year-end reports might have slightly different reports that you would need for year-end, possibly even quarter end. You might have some different reports that you would need that you would not be reporting for the month end information. And then you might have internal reports as well. So I might customize my internal reports and say edit and new group. And then I'm going to say this is going to be my internal reports. So these are going to be the reports that I would have for myself that I use during the data input. I format them differently so that I can use them for my internal use. And then you could have like payroll reports, edit report list, and say we got the drop down rise up, and we're going to say new group, and you could have like payroll reports. So that's another kind of grouping that you could basically set them up in. If I then go to my balance sheet here, and if I was to memorize this report, and so I'm going to say replace the memorized report, memorized new report. And then if I go down here, you can see this basically in the drop down now. So now we have these different options that we can then use in order to memorize them in our different types of groupings. So that's the general idea. Next time we'll go into a little bit more depth in terms of the actual memorization process and how we might think about how to memorize basically in this kind of format and actually memorize some more of those reports.